not even moving from a chair. It's interesting. This time I've said no, there'll be a more relaxed one. So, Asmar, thank you very much for being part of the conference. And of course, the topic is something which is very relevant, but I'm not going to tell you the topic. I'm going to put it up there. Let's put it out there. So that's what it is. Med-Arb, of course. I put this out. How, what, when, where, which, who, why. It's just that, look, I put it out always as ask all the questions in relation to this subject, because there are lots of things that people have in their mind. What, and we'll cover anything. I know you wanted a little shorter one, but let's just discuss anything or everything we can get covered in that. So this is what it is. So Asmar, now you're on the spot. Please tell us about the conference.
Thank you so much, Vikram. I want to express my deep gratitude for inviting me to this amazing conference, which gathers together a lot of experienced people, or from different countries, from different cultural background, with different languages. That is really amazing that we all gather together and can talk about common things, discuss different views. And I'm happy that I'm part of this conference. I want to start with my topic, why I have chosen to talk about this topic.
But Asmar, what about yourself? You have to tell us about yourself.
Oh, okay. yeah, sorry. As you mentioned in a previous session, I am from the Republic of Azerbaijan. I'm a lawyer. I have more than 10 years of work experience as a lawyer, especially in civil service. I have worked more than nearly 8 years at the appeal court, and this was the place where I felt that I have interest in dispute resolution, alternative dispute resolution, because I was nearly at the heart of disputes, at the hottest place of conflicts, contradictions about people. And I at that time, when I started to work at the appeal court, we didn't have alternative dispute resolution in Azerbaijan, even mediation. And I was always thinking, sitting at the courtroom, listening to fighting parties, and thinking that I would wish to help them to solve the dispute, because most of these disputes were could be settled out of courtroom. And fortunately, after several years, the law on mediation was adopted in Azerbaijan. And now, in commercial and family disputes, according to the law, this mediation is mandatory before the litigation. So I think that's a great progress for Azerbaijan. And then I got my second LLM degree in the United States at the University of Missouri in dispute resolution, and I can say that I dived into dispute resolution world in the United States, because in my country at that time we didn't have ADR. It was not so famous, even now, in comparison with the United States. So, and then I had internship at New York-based International Institute of Conflict Prevention and Resolution, so which gave me great opportunity to learn from ADR professional ADR practitioners. Now I continue my job in Azerbaijan as a legal manager, and my job is also indirectly related to dispute resolution, because we are establishing arbitration and probably other dispute resolution mechanisms in Azerbaijan. So I'm happy to be part of this job and implement in Azerbaijan, in my country, what I have learned in the United States. If you have questions, I would be happy to answer.
Look, my question first of all is: do you have the mediator or mediation mindset, or you have the arbitration mindset? Which, but look, actually, that A word is not used on my shows because for me that is another world. That litigation, arbitration, same thing. It's on that side, and mediation on this side. So alternative, yes, they try to put them all together, which is for me an issue always. They're totally different concepts, but okay, let all be packaged together. Where do you fit in? I mean, look, all you ADR, yes, I'm into ADR, but ADR is the A word also. So arbitration is part of it, and it's totally a different process. That's litigation, private litigation.
Yeah.
So what is in terms of mediation? Have you looked at that as something that you enjoy doing? Is that you like that?
Yes, of course, because we in our previous session we talked about peaceful mindset. I was that kid at school who always tried to reconcile fighting parties. I was always trying to settle all disputes through negotiations. Even now, I'm pro peace person, and yes, I think I have my
Gigi, why is
mediation
Gigi gone?
mindset.
Let's get her in. Gigi, have you heard that? Exactly what I'm saying. You did not say this in that session. This is exactly what I'm saying. You existed. This was your mindset. No one had to do anything to tell you that. This is her live example in front of you. And she did not pick
Yes.
this up. I should have asked her that question maybe. But
I'm
this is it.
still the same. I have the same
Exactly.
reputation. Who is peaceful, who can create peace in her environment.
Okay, I rest my case. This is it. That's what I was talking about. So she existed there. She had that mindset. It was all there. And if that environment was created around her, everyone would know, yes, some issue. Let's go to Asmar. That's how it had to happen in school. And that's what you had. That's the circle that I'm talking about. They could have created. So Asmar, you were all in it. You were in it. And last session, you did not talk about it. Otherwise, we would have asked you exactly how your thought process was in school, the mindset. Did anyone have to come and train you to it? I tell you, this evolution of a mediator series, I started for this reason that, of course, Ken Cloak, it started with Ken Cloak. The point that the person that he is, of course, as he's evolved as he went along, but the person that he was as a child also, what all goes into a child growing up. So of course, the family that you brought in, the value system of the families. I went beyond that. I said, okay, let's go into the grandparents, their value system. What did the child imbibe? Then, of course, there is the intergenerational aspect, which I don't know. I mean, I put it out there. I'm not going to study it. I'm sure that people study it. The people study the negatives, the intergenerational trauma, but no one studies the intergenerational spirituality. And that also gets transferred into children. So all that goes into being who you are. So you are, Asmat, who you are because of a lot of things around you. I cannot create that in a training. It cannot happen. If it could happen, we could change the world. Let's just stop all education. Let's just do this. Gigi is going to go out and just give you all the training required. That mindset can't be created. So I'm talking about the ones with the mediator by mindset and the peacemaker mindset. So you had all that. So now, how does that translate into your work? I mean, when you are in court, you want to reach out to the other person and say, why, why are we fighting? Do you do that? You want to do that or not?
I think I wanted to do this, but I had no authority to do that. You know, as a employee of the court, because I was working for the court for the government. So I was at the court room with in different role. But I would wish, and as I mentioned, it was the right time when I realized that yes, I wanna participate in dispute resolution. I wanna parties have peace. Of course, if it is possible. Of course, this dispute deserves peaceful settlement. Yeah, this is how I
This
end
again
up.
proves what I was saying, that because of that authority figure, you are not going to do it because you are working for the government and the government is not going to let it. These authority figures come. It's nothing. I'm telling you that what happens for a 7-year-old happens all throughout life. It's the same environment. The situation changes. It became a courtroom instead of a school, whatever. But the concept remains the same. Because of all authority figures, a person like you wants to reach out but doesn't do it because someone else won't like it. It's the same example. Nothing else changes.
I don't. That's interesting point, but I think in a different way because they would like ethical question. I had to be neutral as the judge, but because I had another tasks at my previous job. But now I think disputing parties have their choice, have their they can choose another mediator. You know, maybe their counsel, they can advise them to choose a mediator, the third party who can help to solve their dispute. But I want to mention another thing regarding Gigi's job, a nonprofit. Probably I realized my mediator mindset when I was working in my 20s, when I was working at court. But I would wish to have to encourage to settle the disputes at school, to realize myself, to understand this skill with the help of adult or any other trained person like Gigi. I think I would flourish, my skill would flourish better if I had support.
Your skill would have flourished if you were given the opportunity to do those mediations in school.
Yeah.
Look, it's an experience thing. If you were given the opportunity and you were the person to go to, and everyone came to you, and you were not just helping your friends, you were helping everyone. Look, this is evolution. That's how the evolution happens, and it happens only by experience. It is not one of those things that you can in any other way do it. And of course, with it goes that reflective practice. So you, as a person by itself, you in general reflect, and in the way as a mediator you reflect, and that's how the evolution happens. So, and that with the mediator mindset, being reflective is part of it. That is part of it. And every moment of our lives, we are reflecting on everything that we do, and that's when you actually evolve. So all that is an important part of it. But at any stage, are we going to discuss the topic, or?
Yeah.
No, it's related. It's all connected. It's all connected. I'll tell you why, but I'll
Yes.
tell you later how it's connected. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it is directly connected with my topic, because later I will discuss exactly this issue, how mediation and arbitration, the nature, how they are interrelated and how they are totally different, and whether they can be together or not.
and we got Gigi into the picture. She was nice, relaxed in the morning, and suddenly we called her in. It's okay. I just wanted to point it out to you. At any point of time, you want to go back to what you were doing, it's perfectly all right. But I wanted to tell you this is exactly what is the situation, and this is just someone with us right here. And there's so many of those people out there. We just have to bring them out. That's all we have to do. Yes.
I mean, if I can add, it's about exposure, and we've been conditioned to behave a certain way at an early age.
Absolutely. And Gigi, if you want to tell us about yourself, you can. This is another session, okay? So once you come into the picture, if you want to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. I started my career path as a paralegal. I worked in the court systems. I sat for family law and immigration, and I saw win-lose every day. And I said to myself the same thing. There has to be another way, because someone leaves in tears, the other one is happy. What is the alternative? And I didn't know anything about alternative dispute resolution mediation at this time. And I just went home and I did some research. And what I typed into the search engine was alternative ways to resolve family conflict. That's what I typed into the search engine. And that's when it came up. Dispute resolution mediation. And then I applied to the negotiation and conflict resolution program at Columbia University. And that's where I got my master's degree, Master's of Science in negotiation and conflict resolution. So yeah, it was a journey to get here.
It's all a journey. It's still a journey. It's going on.
Still is, that's right.
Yeah. Yes, Asmar. So it's all about Med-Arb. Med-Arb, or is it just Med-Arb?
I think I will cover all of them, especially Med-Arb and Med-Arb. I have prepared a presentation. Let me just share my screen with you. Okay, sorry. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is where what I sent you should have come here. That little, I make all that effort to make that nice little thing. That should have been up here.
Okay. So this is the agenda of what we are going to talk today. The brief introduction to the hybrid processes, Med-Arb, Med-Arb, and then we are going to talk about the hybrid processes, which countries are famous for implementation of hybrid processes, and what famous arbitration institutions, how they address this question, if address even. Then we will dive into the analysis part of the question of the processes, and discuss the advantages, challenges these processes can have, and solutions to challenges, which I think I want to share with you. And I want to mention about I want to mention that today we are going to talk not only about hybrid processes. I will focus mostly on the issue when the process ends in arbitration after mediation, and when the same neutral shifts from one role to another role, let's say mixed roles of the neutral. So ARB-Med is the process when the dispute resolution process starts with arbitration, but then parties can think that, okay, there are some questions that not arbitrator but mediator can help us to solve these questions, and they can ask the same neutral to be their mediator, or they can opt for another, they can choose another neutral. Med-Arb is the process when the settlement process starts with mediation, but then either they cannot solve the dispute between them, or they think that there are questions that needs immediate final and binding decision by arbitral tribunal, so they switch to arbitration. And again, the question can arise if the same neutral continues the dispute resolution process. The third one is Med-Arb. It's again starts with arbitration, then they switch to mediation to solve the question, the dispute, but they fail, and the process ends up with impasse, and they switch back to arbitration, maybe with the same neutral, and that neutral decides on their case. Now I want to tell you about in which parts of the world these processes are very famous. One of them is China. It is very frequently applicable and implemented process in China. In Germany, but it is not so famous. So Gigi can confirm my assertion that in the United States it is not famous. It is not frequently applicable process because of ethical challenges, and so party neutrals try to avoid all these kind of offers by parties. By the way, not only parties can initiate the switching hats, the shifting roles of the neutral. So experienced neutral also can offer his or her help as a mediator or arbitrator. So, but it's a little bit tricky. It's preferred to have the offer by unanimous choice of parties. So let's talk about some hybrid processes in arbitration institutions. On central arbitration rules, we can see that they again, they rely on the choice of parties, and they say if parties agree on settlement of the dispute, then what the arbitral tribunal shall do, they either shall issue an order for termination, or if parties request again, they can make a consent award, which means that the settlement between the parties becomes an arbitral award. And this is, I think this is very good for parties, because the mediation settlement automatically gets the feature of enforceability of arbitral award. This creates the question of Singapore Convention on Mediation, and we know that New York Convention is applicable, is in force and applicable in 168 countries. But unlike New York Convention, Singapore Convention is somehow falls back in terms of its enforceability. So for now, arbitral awards suits for parties' choice, for parties' interests. There's also another unsettled model law on international commercial mediation and international settlement agreements for mediation, which directly address the question of switching hats. So again, the key column of mixed roles is parties' consent. Again, you see here, unless otherwise agreed by parties. If there is an agreement, no law, let's say, or ethical code can curb parties from asking the same neutrals help. Okay, so we said that in Asia, Med-Arb or other hybrid processes are very famous, and we see here Singapore International Arbitration Center and the Singapore Chamber of Maritime Arbitration adopted Med-Arb protocol in 2014, which thoroughly provides procedure how the hybrid process should be conducted. The process starts with the International Singapore Arbitration Center. Then the center, upon by parties' request, send the case to Singapore Chamber of Maritime Arbitration, and the mediator starts the settlement process. If the mediation fails, they go back to arbitration, and the proceeding resume until the final award is issued. So I will talk about just briefly about other international institutions, just briefly, and we see International Center for Dispute Resolution, which is the International Division of American Arbitration Association. They provide arbitration rules of ICDR. They say that the rules say that the parties shall mediate their dispute concurrently with the arbitration. So arbitration rules explicitly allow parties to have hybrid processes. Let's see what ICC says. ICC takes a little bit softer approach, and ICC arbitration rules have Appendix 4, which lists permissible case management techniques. And this appendix encourages parties to consider settlement of the case of dispute either by negotiation or by mediation. And again, if parties have the settlement, ICC arbitration rules allows parties to have this consent award under arbitration rules. Let us see what says Center for Effective Dispute Resolution. Also, again, the rules for the facilitation of settlement in international arbitration allows parties to have consent award, and also these rules also encourage parties to settle their dispute in within the arbitration process. So the arbitral tribunal can offer parties to have settlement with other alternative dispute resolution methods. We see here China International Economic and Trade Arbitration Commission. They directly address this question in Article 47 in the arbitration rules. And the rules say if the conciliation process is not successful, the rules forbid all parties, the same conciliator, arbitrator, parties to use any view, any opinion, any evidence produced during the mediation process, during the conciliation process, in further proceedings, either in court, in arbitration, or any other proceedings. But the rules do not address the question what the third party conciliator will do with the information obtained during the conciliation process, how to be unbiased, how to, let's say, forget the information obtained during the conciliation process. Another arbitration rules I want to mention, Hong Kong International Arbitration Center. This arbitration rules of this institution does not affirmatively call for encouraging settlements by parties, but again, they also have a possibility of mediation window, and these arbitration rules also confirm consent award, like switch of mediation settlement into arbitral award, which gives possibility of enforceability, better enforcement of the decision. So let's see, London Court of International Arbitration. These rules, it's very interesting that they do not address hybrid processes, and but interestingly, the London arbitration rules, London Court of International Arbitration rules address the consent award issue. So it's allowed under these rules to switch settlement into arbitration award. Also, I have found some interesting statistical facts, which say that in the recent decade, hybrid processes became very popular. For example, in 2021 International Arbitration Survey, which was conducted by Queen Mary University of London in partnership with international law firm White & Case LLP, and they analyzed nearly more than 1,000 respondents' responses, and we see here that 90% of respondents said that they would prefer cross-border disputes. Also, 59% of respondents chose international arbitration in conjunction with mediation and negotiation, because we see here this is the highest percentage of all responses, which proves the recent trends of having hybrid processes. Another survey is also conducted in 2021 by London Chamber of Arbitration and Mediation and Herbert Smith Freehills. They also confirmed this approach and found out that respondents successfully settled over 70% of their cases with mediation, which is very interesting and I think good for all of us. So I want to switch to advantages. First, people prefer hybrid mechanisms because they are flexible. It allows parties to design a dispute resolution process in order to meet their expectations and their needs. The second one is the familiarity with the dispute. This is applicable to the case where the same neutral shifts from one position from one role to another role. because while having the same mutual gives parties the opportunity to have educated with not institution, but dispute history, to have this mutual which has history of the dispute. So no need to spend extra time to educate that mutual, which is one of the advantages of having the same mutual in hybrid processes. Time saving, so they do not spend time for looking for another mutual, for educating another mutual. Cost effective. Again, they can be situations when parties want investigate, when the parties want they do not want to look for another mutual, and they can make a deal with the same mutual who they trust, who have already had a business relationship, let's say. Another advantage, as I mentioned before, is the enforceability of having hybrid processes, which started with mediation and ended up with arbitration. Because, as I mentioned, New York Convention is more stronger in this question, and switching mediation settlement to consent are what helps parties to easily enforce their settlement. Then parties have trust to the neutral. They already had this neutral in previous mediation. They believe that that neutral can help them to solve their case in arbitration, because that neutral has history of the dispute. They trust that neutral and want to have the same neutral in arbitration process. Also, the last one, I think, parties and counsel take more seriously mediators' efforts. Sometimes this happens when, let's say, if counsels, attorneys think that, when mediator offers something, some solution, or maybe some mentions that, okay, the fact you mentioned, the claim you brought here is weak, and arbitral tribunal will not consider this claim as strong. And some of counsels, they object, and they can easily claim that no, arbitral tribunal will not agree with your opinion, with your approach, and this is indeed strong case. So in order to avoid these kind of situations, this is not I wouldn't say that this is coercion of counsels to agree with the mediator, but it is some sort of how I think this helps parties to have the settlement. This somehow limits counsels of creating extra, let's say, problems for parties. So now let's talk about challenges. I think the main challenge of having the same neutral in hybrid process is confidentiality concerns. As we mentioned earlier, the key element of mediation is confidentiality, because parties have ex parte meetings with mediator. They can share sensitive information with mediator in caucus meetings. So how the mediator having this confidential information be unbiased and impartial while making an arbitral award? So this is a really tough question, and this also can cause parties being less open to with the mediator, and can cause that neutral to be biased, either implicit bias, either unconscious bias, because how one person can keep secrets from herself, I don't know. That's really psychological question, and that's one of the reasons why in the United States, ADR practitioners try to avoid mixed roles in hybrid processes. By the way, in 2010, in Hong Kong Court of First Instance decided a case where exactly relevant to this question, addressed this question, and the court refused to enforce Chinese arbitration award on the basis that because they found that the arbitration award was against public policy, because it was adopted. Decision was made with apparent bias, because the decision was made by the same neutral, and the challenging party proved that bias during the court proceedings. Another challenge which can parties face is this difference between the roles of mediator and arbitrator. Vikram, you in the beginning of our session, you mentioned exactly this question. In mediation, we talk about self-determination, we talk about party autonomy, we talk about confidentiality. Okay, confidentiality is applicable both for arbitration and mediation, but in arbitration process is the adjudication process. It is a litigation in a private forum. So we all accept that mediation and arbitration are totally different processes by their nature, by their spirit, and these both processes require different skills by neutrals. Only very experienced professionals can overcome this difficult task. And I think it cannot be ignored that the roles of mediator and arbitrator are similar. They are totally different. They have no similarity. They have similarities, but the as I mentioned earlier, the nature of these two processes are far away from each other. Let's talk about the third challenge. So we say here that parties may not feel confident to strive for settlement because during the mediation process, parties can think that, okay, I shared some confidential information, very sensitive information about the case, which can weaken my position if this case go to arbitration. So at that point, parties they do not eager to get the settlement, and it's not the fact that they do not desire to have the settlement, but they unconsciously avoid going for settlement, making compromises, opening cards, or making some disclosing some confidential information in order to have that settlement. And the last one, I think parties, this is not discussed a lot. The last point, vulnerability of a party without a counsel in hybrid processes, because in most countries, people, if they raise the question, if they claim something, they first counsel, get advice from a professional, from a lawyer. But in countries like mine, some people, they cannot afford legal advice from a professional. So they pay some fee, they get the claim and go defend themselves at the court, at litigation by themselves, without any legal help. And let's imagine the situation when they are going to the mediation without a counsel, and then the other party suggests have the same neutral in the arbitration process. Let's say one party is the employee, the other party is the company employer with counsel, and employee without counsel, and person without legal knowledge cannot determine the risks associated with having the same neutral both in mediation and arbitration. Okay, some institutions, some policies, some ethical codes, professional codes in some countries require neutrals to explain risks associated with their role, with shifting their roles. But I'm not sure that this can be enough. This can mitigate all risks related of having the same neutral in different processes. I found out and I forwarded some solutions for that. I think that first, the offer of having the same neutral should come from both parties. Okay, some sources say that experienced professionals can also forward this idea, but I think unanimous decision by parties is enough. No need to any other interference by neutrals. I think switching roles should be permitted by some legal basis, even case law. And as I mentioned earlier, the person who accepts or forwards the idea handling the case in two roles should be competent, should have enough experience in mediation in order to have in order to provide professional services, should have mediation mindset, and also derived from this professionalism should be able to explain all related risks to parties, especially to vulnerable parties, without counsels. Another parties, here parties have some, parties can agree in advance how to organize, how to set up their process, hybrid process, so they can pick up, they can agree on what evidence the neutral is to consider in arbitration. I think this solution can help a lot in order to avoid future challenges at trial. Again, I mentioned that the main part, which the key part of mediation is caucuses, but in hybrid processes, caucuses can only exaggerate the situation. I think waiving the right to caucuses, having caucuses meeting, having ex parte meetings can help a lot to mitigate the risk associated with hybrid mixed roles. Okay, another solution is giving parties the right to opt out at any time, and neutral as well. If parties or neutral think that the process is not productive, it's just losing time, or something goes in a wrong direction, so they should have a right to stop the process and decide what to do further. Okay, I think that's the last one. Parties agree not to move to vacate an arbitral award solely on the grounds that neutral served as a mediator, or mediator served as an arbitrator. These kind of agreements, I think, can help a lot to avoid any challenges related to hybrid processes. Okay, let's summarize what we have talked today. I think in general, yes, hybrid processes can cause some difficulties, can continue with some challenges through litigation, but in general, the statistics also shows that this helps a lot. This is productive, and it has, so let's say, advantages outweigh the disadvantages. But meanwhile, I think I think we have to be mindful, not on the least on the number of advantages, on the weight of disadvantages, which is heavier, which can create more difficult questions, more challenges. So yeah, I think we have to be very, very concerned and mindful when deal with hybrid processes, especially in the mixed roles. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
If you
Asmar.
have.
Of course, I have. Yes. Okay, so I'll look a little bit on, of course, terminology. Asmar, I will always talk about terminology. So for me, parties in the arbitration and in the mediation, participants. That's what I like to differentiate the two. And neutral in the arbitration, that arbitrator, but neutral for a mediator is a whole debatable issue. There was one symposium I did only on neutrality and mediation. So I don't like to use the word neutral because that itself opens up into a lot of questions. And I just feel for the mediator part of it, let's not use that. I mean, that's the one thing. But of course, let's look at, I'll just show you some text. Okay. Just
Okay.
read it. Just read this.
The parties settle the dispute, the arbiter shall terminate the proceedings, and if requested by the parties, not object by the form of arbiter on the ground.
Okay, so this is.
Yeah.
Okay. Where is this from?
Uncetral? No.
Yes, Uncetral. Yeah,
Uncetral.
When was this put out?
I think 2018. No.
Okay. Now I'll show you another text.
Oh.
Same thing.
Yes.
Okay. So these words also came in. This is okay. Now let me tell you where background. The first one I showed you is the Uncetral Model Law on International Commercial Arbitration, 1985. And this, what I showed you second, was our Arbitration Act, 1996. So you can imagine 40 years that you're talking about all this. It's been out there. There is some fundamental issue. Why is it not used? 40 years is up there. We can see that. In 1996, we got it we've got the statute. No one talks about it because people don't want to talk about it, because now we have to understand, get into the root of that issue. Okay, we like to get to the root of the problem. So where is the problem, Asmar? Why are we talking about this even after 40 years? It's being discussed in the world. What is the reason for it? The practical part of it. Tell me what are the issues in terms of using it has come up.
I think lawyers.
Yes.
In last decades, yes, we lawyers. In last decade, it became very famous, very applicable. The lawyers, because mediation became very famous. They felt that mediation is became used more than arbitration, and mediators are not required to be lawyers. I mean, not all mediators have to be lawyers.
They should not.
And I think lawyers felt that risk of losing the legal market, and they said, okay, what we can do? Let's combine let's combine all of them and keep the market in our hands. You know, I remember when I was watching on YouTube an interview with Colin Rule. He was talking about the former eBay dispute resolution, who established that system in eBay, and he was talking about online dispute resolution, and he was talking about the advantages that brings online dispute resolution to the world, and he mentioned that legal profession is the most conservative profession in the world, and lawyers do not accept innovative ideas so easily. If they feel some risks associated to them or coming towards them, they send those people to jail. You know, you made such a joke, and when I was making research about this topic, and I came to conclusion that lawyers created the hybrid processes with switching hats. And I said, okay, Colin was right.
Yeah, I think we again, this will go back to our last session. This is all a colonizer structure. That lawyer is a colonizer's it's part of that colonizer structure. That structure, it hasn't changed. That whole structure has been taken like that, and it's still going on. And a little bit of, I mean, maybe digression, but the civil procedure code that we have is 1908. We got independence in 1947. So a colonizer structure in terms of the civil procedure code also we took, and we are continuing with that. So it's all that same structure exists. So lawyers are totally benefiting from that structure. So why would they want to change that? So simple as that. But I think the good part is that when you look at the Singapore thing, at least they've said Singapore International Arbitration Center, Singapore International Mediation Center, at least bifurcated the two. Other places, these international arbitration centers in their objective will write mediation, which I think confuses the user, first of all, that what are we talking about? Because point is that from in the mediation world, in the arbitration world, you can understand the differences and everything. For the user, that's just the user even understand the differences. So I think, first of all, it has to come from the user, I think, for them to understand what is really happening. And for that, I feel, well, like I told you, terminology needs to be explained. This is arbitration terminology. This is mediation terminology. That is a different process. It has nothing to do with this. And that person, look, the people in dispute agreeing to the mediator becoming the arbitrator, I mean, it's maybe also because of their lack of understanding. They should not agree to it. But is it explained to them that, okay, this can happen? I don't even know. So I think what is happening is that lawyers control the process, which is where the issues start from. They will control the arbitration, definitely. And that moves into the mediation also, which is not good for the mediation. Mediation is not a lawyer controlled activity at all. Process. I've spoken about it so many times. This is where we have to explain to people also that a lawyer is an expert in the law, to be brought in when there is a certain clarification or something where a legal interpretation is required for whatever reason. Because mediation is not about your legal arguments. It's a different process. It's not about positions. Why do we need the lawyer sitting there? So I think that part of it, I think lawyers don't want to leave control of that. So mediation will not go on as it should go on. So the mediation part of it will not be successful the way it should be. So they would rather just go through it, maybe the motions, and then want to come back into the arbitration. So I think, like you said, very nicely, it's the lawyers. Problem starts from there. And how do we get that out of the picture is also, that's going to be the challenge, which is the same challenge for mediation everywhere in the world. If you think that US example, that you think good things are happening in mediation, they're not. It's all a lawyer controlled process. Is it even mediation the way I understand it or you understand it? Is it really that? Or is it just settlement conferences? Is that what is happening? So in that case, when you use the word neutral, the person they want to pick up is also sometimes someone, like a lot of ex-judges are mediators. What are they looking for, form the mediator for? What is that whole process? So it's like the elephant and the blind man situation. Everyone looks at it from there, understands mediation in their own way. That common word goes around, but the process part of it is a lot of different aspects in terms of the understanding of that is there.
Yeah. The main key issue which concerns which makes me really think about okay, you present, as parties present the case, parties present evidence in adjudication, in arbitration, upon their choice. Parties pick up which information to present, which evidence to present, and which one to keep to yourself. But in mediation, the key point of mediation is mediator facilitates the negotiation. In order to facilitate the negotiation, mediator try to get more sensitive information from parties as he can. So let's imagine you are a mediator and you know every confidential information about parties and you tried your best to help them, but at the end mediator fails and you have all this information in your head. It will not go anywhere. It will be with you. And you switch the role to be an arbitrator. Of course, I think I can't imagine a person who can ignore that confidential information. Probably they try, they cope with themselves, but I think implicit bias and unconscious bias 100% exists in mixed roles.
Yeah, actually there'll be a major conflict, because there might be a certain document which, of course, comes up in a mediation, in the discussion with the mediator separately. Something comes up. Now, ethically, you can't say that, okay, I saw that, but I now unsee it. That's not going to happen. So definitely when it comes down to the arbitration part of it, and that document otherwise has not come in, but you know about it, would you not refer to it, can refer to it? I mean, in the sense, it's just totally different concept. They should be just kept separately. There is no other way out of it. And that part of it will practically, will people let that happen? Because I'm saying it's nothing new. People are discussing, you said about the US, very recently, one state in the US passed some law in relation to Med-Arb. Now, this is one, I think last year or the year before that, 1 or 2 years back. I'm talking about 40 years back. We were still talking about it in our own country. In 1996, we got the law. So it's lying there. There's some fundamental issue which we need to get in more in depth into, how to change that perception of the process or whatever. But this thing that you're saying, that okay, some people are not represented by councils, I just feel that in that kind of a situation, definitely mediation would definitely be a much better option for them, because
Yes.
obviously,
Yeah, because the in solution part I mentioned that the mediator, if switch the role to arbitrator, or vice versa, they have to explain all the related risks to parties. But when the party has a counsels legally educated, who has the licensing and have competence to advise its client, they can tell the risks which are not mentioned by the mediator. But I think when the party doesn't have the lawyer nearby and explaining those risks, this can end up with failure for that party. I am concerned of situations of exactly those parties who cannot afford a lawyer, because we all know that legal services are not cheap, and people I even don't want to think about what can happen, how they can fail without knowing about the conflict of interest, without ethical challenges of that mixed roles, of that person playing the mixed role. So that's.
No, I'm just thinking that when you talk about the unrepresented parties, for the moment, I'm using the word parties because they're part of an arbitration. In that kind of a situation, that's why the neutral word I don't like, because once it moves into the mediation and there is a power imbalance, like you said, this is a large company and maybe a person who was in that company, the role of the mediator actually should not be neutral. To handle power imbalances, you need to have, of course, we've had that discussion in that symposium, that what the role of the mediator should be in that situation. So that way, it's a good thing to explain to people as to this actually helps those people who are representing themselves, and to be, of course, this aspect of differentiating the, I mean, the mediator becoming the arbitrator, definitely that aspect should not even come up, should be very clear. I mean, to say that if the parties agree, like the ancestral model law also says, if the parties agree, but you, like you were saying, does the party even understand? They might what they're agreeing
Exactly.
to. Do they understand?
Yes.
So I think that's why I think just should be just clear, keep it separate. That's it. Nothing beyond that. It should, this, if the parties agree, should that just take it out, because how many people can you explain that to?
But we cannot ignore the fact that what the service showed. I think people prefer having mixed hybrid processes because they can have time, they can save time, they can save costs, they can pick up the same neutral who think they are educated, and they will not spend time to educate a new third party for settling a dispute. I think sometimes disputing parties try just set aside all the related risks in order to have the result, you know.
But I tell you what, again, this comes back to what the understanding of mediation is. Like you said, not having to get another neutral kind of thing, convenience, you're saying. I'm saying that convenience is looked at from what you expect from that neutral. I'm still calling it a neutral, but I don't, I like that word in relation to mediation, but I'm using it right now. If the expectation is a settlement conference, it's a different concept. Don't call it mediation then. So then you're okay with the person being the, of course, being someone who is a neutral in that sense, but is not doing the arbitration, but is assisting us in some way to resolve it. It might not be mediation, as at least I understand it. I mean, look, again, like I said, that word will go on, but in that kind of a situation also, if it's all right or not, okay, that's another debatable, but it moves a little bit away from mediation. So in that kind of a scenario, is it all right for them to do it? Because if it's a settlement conference, are they going beyond what they have in the arbitration? Are they going into what we understand as mediation, getting some confidential information and giving it to the this neutral now on this side of the mediation part, which again, I'm using the word mediation, but it's not mediation, because are they going into all that? So if he's not going to go on to that, and it's only based on what is provided in the arbitration, and it is just a settlement conference, maybe the same person can do. I mean, I'm not saying anything on that. That's their understanding of what they need from the process. But if they need mediation, it's a different process. There, yes, there might be confidential things that you might talk about, but then are they the sort who says, okay, no, we have no issue with the same person, we are not going to give any confidential information to this person? So they walk into a mediation without really walking into a mediation. They've held back, they know how much to hold back, and then they have these councils to tell them how much to hold back. Then it's not a mediation. So I think we have to be able to explain this aspect, that if you are looking at it from material in an arbitration, and yes, there is someone to assist you understanding the legal aspect of it and explaining that in some way and helping you settle, okay, if you want to call that mediation, up to you. I'm not going to get into that, but okay, then maybe the same person cannot. So that's something Asmar will go to discuss and think about, and you'll maybe give us
Yeah.
more of your understanding. But finally, I think it's down to the practical part. Let's just find out, in the last 40 years, why is it still being spoken about as if some new thing is being discussed? Even today, they talk about it, okay, Med-Arb, and people think, oh, what is this new thing that's coming up? It's there, it's been there. There is the issue somewhere on the practical implementation of it, and that is what we need to change. And not just for Med-Arb, but for mediation in general. The way, of course, like the lawyers control the process is not good for mediation, is not good for Med-Arb, Med-Arb, none of them. So that part of it, but I wanted to point out to you, because it might be useful some other time for you. I was showing you our law, which was taken from the model law, 1985 model law only. But in our case, they've used these words. Okay, this part, this
May use
was
mediation constitutional
okay.
procedures at any time.
This part is in our law, because if you look at the The 1985 one, this wasn't there. And why I want to put this across to you is because I've been discussing this when it comes to a law on mediation. There was a bill in our parliament also, which was put, luckily wasn't passed, but they want to do away with this word. Because today, of course, in 1996, we took the 1995 UNCITRAL arbitration rules. We also took the conciliation rules, which the UNCITRAL had, 1980 rules. So imagine we were far ahead of our times. We put all that. And that conciliation is part of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, but it is a standalone process. So you are in an arbitration, you have two options. Why I'm saying these two words are important, and you can have that discussion, and we can have another discussion on that, is that in an arbitration, you can stay in the arbitration, go in for mediation, and come to the arbitrator or the tribunal and ask them to pass a consent award. So when you're doing mediation, you stay in the arbitration. Then why is the conciliation word used? Conciliation is by itself a standalone aspect which has provisions for itself. Once you get into a settlement agreement in conciliation, in our law, that settlement agreement is as good as a consent award. So you don't have to come back to the arbitrator or the tribunal. So this is interesting or important to point out that these two words may be required, because do you want to stay in the arbitration, get a consent award from the tribunal and use it in the New York and under the New York Convention? Or you want to go out of the arbitration, go into a standalone as a process, get that settlement agreement, which is by itself enforceable as a consent award, but it is actually a settlement agreement. So it can be used in the under the Singapore Convention as the Singapore Convention goes on. So that is why both of those words, whenever it comes to discussion, should be out there. That's what my discussion and debate has been, because the attempt was to do away with the conciliation word. Just call it mediation. And I have a problem with that if you only call it that, that means either are you sending them out of the arbitration, because the mediation has had its own provisions. So if they're going out of the arbitration and that settlement agreement is as good as a decree of the court, it won't be as good as a consent award, because that in our bill, that was the whole thing. Then they do not get the benefit of the New York Convention, but they want to stay in the arbitration. So how do you explain to someone that we are using the word mediation, but we are not sending you under the law of mediation that you have? You are still saying in the arbitration. Makes it more complex. So I just feel that sometimes people have not thought about the larger implications of these aspects, and really for convenience sake, let's just do away with one word. But I think options should be available to the people in that dispute, that you want to stay in the arbitration or you want to go out of the arbitration. Because the advantage of going out of the arbitration is, and if that settlement agreement is as good as a consent award, at least you don't have this cost of coming back to the arbitrators. And
I have a question. How you showed the articles from law. I'm curious whether how effective and frequently does this article is applied in your country?
Not used. I'm telling you, lawyers control the process. They don't. In India, you'll be so surprised that this provision that of course, I'm showing you the arbitration part, the settlement part of it. That whole provision on conciliation that we have is so nicely put. It's a simple process available there. I mean, if you look at it, totally party self-determination and everything, you can choose whom you want as a conciliator. Of course, that, well, like I said, because we're using that conciliation because UNCITRAL was using that word. If you've seen the model law, the mediation, the model law that's come out now, it very, very clearly clarifies that we were using that word. Now we're using the word mediation, but there is no substantive difference. But people, either they're confused or want to confuse people. Lawyers, judges, and even mediators say there is no law on mediation in our country. Some of them have said that. And all I have to say is that you just go into our act. Okay, that's very simple. What else do you do when you interpret any statute? Just go into the act. This is how our act starts. That speak about the conciliation rules 1980, and it talks about how these have been adopted by us in this law. And if you look at this aspect of these conciliation rules, the UNCITRAL model law that has come out in the 2000, which year was that, 2018, clarifies this
Yes.
position. So there is no issue. We have a law on mediation. It's called conciliation. And the model law very nicely says mediation means conciliation or any other word, as long as it's a process where someone assists you in resolving a dispute and doesn't have the authority to impose a solution. That's all you have to check. The word doesn't matter. And there people look confuse everyone. So imagine if they're confusing people on something which as simple as that. Where would lawyers want to even look at a process within the arbitration? It's just it's a mindset issue, which I think the user is the one who's going to come out and say we want to use it. The lawyers are never going to let them use it. Or if
Yeah,
if the
probably.
lawyers control the mediation part also, which is what is happening in countries where they will control the process, which will not be mediation. Again, there'll be settlement conferences. When they are able to do that, as long as they're getting a fees, they're okay. Wherever they take us through whatever you want, but we have to control it. Because like I said, if it's a good mediator, the person would explain to the people in dispute. I'm saying people in dispute all the time because I don't like to use the word parties. That parties are in the arbitration. Here they are participants. But can explain to them, look, these lawyers are not required in the process. How many mediators can do that? In the US, they can't do it because the lawyers control the process. They decide whom to appoint as mediators. How is the mediator going to say that no, keep the lawyers out? Because tomorrow those lawyers are the ones who are going to appoint you. So you have a conflict of interest. It's not good for the process for the parties. I'm using the word parties. It's not good for them to have the lawyers sitting there, but the mediator won't do it. So it's not the right thing that is happening to people, but because the lawyers control the process, they won't let it happen. So that's why it's a major debate or issue or whatever discussion has to happen with the users. That look, there is this process which is separate from this, but you can always use it in the arbitration. Like I said, in our law we have it. Otherwise, you have the rules in various these institutions. All the rules will have it, or if they don't have it, they should have it. That in an arbitration, you should be able to go for mediation at any point of time. It's your process. It's not controlled by anyone else but you. If the parties want to settle it, who can stop you? Like you were saying, who can stop you from settling it in whatever method you use, a negotiation or mediation or whatever method you want to use? It's open to you. You're not restricted and cannot be restricted by anything. So I think the user is the one we have to educate. The user has to push it. It has to be user driven. It will never be lawyer driven. I'm telling you, it will never happen. Or it will happen, then it won't be mediation, and which is not good for mediation. The word.
Yes. Yes, I agree with you.
So Asmar, you have to give your concluding remarks, and then I mean, I know the time has gone up with me. The problem is that my last sessions go on longer than otherwise.
First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me and having such a interesting discussion. And you raised very important points that I was not aware that I want to say thank you for your raising these questions, because you can never find this in research or in practice. And this is a really interesting topic. I would love to continue these discussions in the future, maybe. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and the kind of, I mean, the passion that you have for the subject is, and of course, research you're doing. So definitely we'll have interesting things which will come out of that for sure. And we have to put it out in the right manner to people, because I think the right information doesn't go out and the user is totally confused about the whole thing, and that's why things are not used. So thank you very much. Please participate in other discussions. You can come for any of the other sessions. So what I'm going to do